It's quiet now. You got what you want? Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Are we ready? You ready?
Ready.
Hey everyone, I'm Leif. I'm here to introduce Mark Fitzgerald. Mark Fitzgerald is the Director of Customer Care at Boise State University. He's been in that role for about 10 years. He likes to consider himself somewhat of an industry maverick. And he's going to be talking today about a vision for your team, doing what people said could not be done. So I've worked with Mark myself. He's a colleague of mine in the Office of Information Technology at Boise State. He said that in introducing him, I could make a couple of playful jabs, and I got nothing. I couldn't think of anything. But I do want to say that Mark is great to work with. If anything, he's put up with a few of my soapbox rants on occasion with a level head and patience and a big picture perspective that I've come to expect from Mark. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say about a vision for your team.
Appreciate it, Lee. Thank you. All right, so there's not a ton of us, so I'd like to make this as informal as we can and more of a discussion. And the topic of doing what people said could not be done, really I want to talk to you and pick your minds and share with the group of how have you had an initiative or a vision and really brought it to fruition. Because as I like what Gordon Jones said yesterday, is institutions are glacial a lot of times in getting things up and going. And usually once you get that momentum going, it's hard to stop it. But how can we take a good initiative and really bring it through even when there's a lot of obstacles, whether it be funding, whether it be people, whether it be opposition of competing ideas. And so as you have thoughts, this is a discussion more than a presentation. This is more about what we can get out of this next 15 minutes. But kind of as a starter to get the creative juices flowing, I've got a couple of questions to see if we can identify three distinct people here. So based on the picture alone, anybody have an idea of who this might be?
Oh, that's Dick.
He's the dude who invented the flop.
Yes, yes.
Fosbury.
Dick Fosbury. And so I lost power here.
Just for a second.
Sure thing. So it is Dick Fosbury, and what did he do? The Fosbury flop. So he cleared 2.24 meters, which was the world's record for the longest time that they weren't able to clear for decades. They'd kind of gotten to what they thought was the maximum of human endurance. And he came up with a new technique. And how he did that, he was told over and over again that he'd never be successful. All of his coaches said, "What are you doing, man? If you're going to compete in the Olympics, you need to do it the right way and none of this flopping stuff." And all I could say was, we'll just have to see. And see if he did. All right, we'll take it a step harder. Who do we think this person is? I think the people at Boise State might have a leg up with this. I'll give them a hint that one of our conference rooms has this picture in it.
Philo Farnsworth?
Philo T. Farnsworth. And so what did Mr. Farnsworth do?
Invented that little thing that goes inside the television, the little bulb thing.
Invented the television, or at least credited with inventing the television, the vacuum tube, cathode ray tube that's in there. Tragic story. If you ever get a chance, there's quite a few videos out on YouTube that tell his story of David and Goliath, him versus RCA, of who can bring television to market the first. Very interesting story to go through. All right, now we're going to the varsity level. Who is? Oh, well, let's get our quote here. While theoretically and technically television may be feasible, commercially and financially, it's an impossibility. Development which we need to waste little time dreaming. And so this is the guy who invented the vacuum tube, in which the cathode ray tube was based on. All right, so our varsity letter. Anybody know who this is? Very good. Good stuff, Borglum. if I'm pronouncing that right. And ideas on what he has accomplished? Hints a little bit.
Rushmore, maybe? That statue in the park.
Mount Rushmore.
The Lincoln statue in Julia Davis Park.
That is correct. He did that as well. So right down here in, just a half mile down in Julia Davis Park, he's got, outside the Boise Art Museum, a few works. And so keeping a cow in the rotunda of the Capitol building, or it's incongruous and ridiculous, is keeping a cow in the rotunda of the Capitol building is what Mount Rushmore, the concept of Mount Rushmore was described as. What do they all have in common?
All white men.
That's one commonality.
They're all told they couldn't do something.
They are.
They're all dreamers.
All Idahoans that did what others said could not be done. And so that's why the sculptor has works right here at Boise. He was out of Boise. Philo did a lot of his work over on the other side of the state. And Dick Fosbury, still alive, actually was over here in Boise for the Idaho IT Symposium and actually did a keynote for that. It was very fascinating to listen to compare innovation to what he was able to accomplish as an athlete. But it kind of gives the idea that when you have a deeply personal idea and a real vision, there's going to be a lot of people that said it can't be done and it shouldn't be done. But when it's deeply personal and something you want to accomplish, I would contend it has to be done. You have to make that happen for that personal satisfaction. So we're going to go over about 6 points of just different ideas of what we can do, from your big idea to how to brainstorm to it, to listen, bottlenecks, all these different things. Probably each could take their own topic session for a conference and talk an hour or two on each of these topics. So we're going to cover them in 5-10 minutes each as we go through different things. So if we talk about big idea, how are you capturing your thoughts today? When you're thinking and all of a sudden you go, oh, I need to do this. How are you guys capturing them?
iPad.
Okay, so you're writing them down, or you just
Notes,
you know in notes or?
I've been taking notes for every session, but then I have one that I've titled Radar. So just stuff that I keep on my radar of things I want to think about afterwards.
You know, I had a hard time going back to school to get my master's degree because after years of going to conferences, most of my takeaways from speakers had nothing to do with what they were talking about. And so I had these rich notes of ideas. And I went back to school and it's like, oh, I gotta write down what's important to the person in the front rather than what's important to me, and kind of threw things up. But any other ideas on how are you capturing things?
I discuss them with people. I find the social interaction, it helps me like remember what we're talking about. So if I can talk about it with colleagues, I have a memory of the discussion and it makes it stick.
It does make it stick, doesn't it? I find just writing them, usually the writing or typing works okay, helps me make things stick. And I don't often go back and look at my notes, but the act of typing them out has helped me to commit things. So I never like the phrase, oh, don't take notes, I'll give you the PowerPoint. That doesn't work for me personally. Other thoughts from the group? Yeah.
I like to put ideas on my Google Calendar for a meeting for in the future. So it's something that I've thought about it, I've typed it down, and then maybe in a week it'll pop up again and you'll be like, oh yeah, and it's giving you a chance to process it.
It's a great way of doing it. Kind of spread it out some too. So how do you decide which ones to act on? I have a lot of thoughts pop through my head. It's good that I don't act on all of them. Is it just the ones that permeate? Yeah.
If I wait for critical mass of other people sharing similar ideas.
I also wait. Usually an opportunity will present itself, a change in the environment, or it just feels that the time's right. Any other thoughts on when do you take something to fruition, when do you just sit on it?
When you can get a co-conspirator.
I saw a great presentation by Kirk Weisler. He talked about the second the first follower is what he called it. And the concept is that you had the real pioneer out there, but it didn't gain that critical mass until you had that first follower.
So related to Amy's comment about critical mass, I think a lot about institutional readiness. Batch-based virtual reality could be a great idea, but if it's totally foreign and it's several steps away from a lot of people's comfort zone, then you need to kind of wait until the readiness is there.
It's too far out there.
Right.
I'll give you a...
I have a question based
yeah,
off
please.
that though. That's one of the things that I'm up against actually is we're having some ADA issues or complete lack of ADA in a lot of areas.
Yes.
And so we know what needs to be done, but finding those people has been ridiculously impossible at our school. Finding people to buy in to the fact that they need to be following the law. And it drives me, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I haven't found my co-conspirator in a whole college of instructors.
That's fine.
It's insane. I'm going to be gray by the end of the year.
I say you bus in people from another area, like, plans them.
What do you do every week? Yeah.
But within higher ed, that actually kind of does work. Some peer pressure of saying, you know, University of Utah's doing this.
Well, and my question in that case too is, like, sometimes I'll get an idea and lots of people will buy into it. For us, it's not so much accessibility as it is open educational resources. And lots of people will sign on and say that they're on to the idea, but they don't actually have the time to implement. So that, for me, is when the ideas get stuck.
You know, I might be getting a little ahead of myself in the presentation, but I'll give you an example of a real transactional thing that we struggled with. We were processing new user accounts as the IT shop, and it required a signature. So everything was faxed back and forth to the data owners, the data stewards. And I was told we needed the signature. There's no getting around that. And so what I did, instead of facing it head on and saying, we're going to get rid of the signature no matter what happens, I broke it down into parts. We'll get the signature, but we'd like to email it to you instead of fax it to you. We'd like to put all of this in our system, and then we'll email you for the signature. And then just kept chipping away at it until all of a sudden, oh yeah, it's not a problem. If you just reply back in your email, say this is okay, is that all right with you? Yeah, that works. We took it much bigger or much smaller parts of the elephant and trying to eat it all at once. All right, so brainstorming. We could go lots of different ways of brainstorming, but you've got the big idea, you've got kind of this vision in your head, but you want to flush it out some. You want to start figuring out some of the challenges, but you already in your heart know what the big challenge is. And so how can you get over that big challenge? You're going to need to brainstorm with some key stakeholder, with people that are interested in supporting you. Yeah, it sounds great, but they just don't necessarily want to be involved. Pulling them into a brainstorm session may help with some ideas to overcome, but it also may give them skin in the game. So of all the different techniques, you probably have heard of a mind map technique or a fishbone, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Thought reverse thinking was kind of, instead of starting with the end, start with the beginning and work in opposite direction. The time travel one was interesting. If you get a chance to Google brainstorming time travel, it's a good technique in which you say, all right, 10 years from now, if we're looking back at the success of this, describe what it looks like, describe how it happened. But I want to use that second one, kind of the post-it notes. I've got 4 different pieces of paper around the room. If you could get into groups, you don't need to really move as much as kind of the 4 of you here, 4 back there. We'll take probably the 3 of you here and the 3 there. What we have, this technique is you set different post-it notes, big post-it notes around the room, break people into groups, and take 3 challenges. Just 3 very small, narrowly focused challenges, and say, if we just barred all the rules, what are some of the different things that we can do to overcome this issue? Let somebody brainstorm. You give them about 10 minutes. We're going to only take 2 minutes or so just to get a flavor for it. But then, once they're done, once that 10 minutes, you rotate them to the next problem, and you bring in a fresh set of eyes that can see what other people talk about and then tack on their ideas. This is especially good if you can intermix people from the organization that have blinders on to their own problems and people from outside of the organization that go, oh yeah, why don't we try this? So on to topics, I'll hand you guys this one here. We have 3 of them, which are the pillars of problems in higher education, which is, one is, how do I get money? The other one is, how do I get space? And the third one is, how do I get people? Seeing that we were going to have 4 groups, I added a 4th one, which is, how do I get team unity or cohesiveness? So if you could take 2 minutes and just as a group, just rapid fire some of the things that you've done in the past to get whatever your topic is. So money, people, or activities.
Networking with other departments.
I'm Jim. Okay, so how do you free up money, find money for projects?
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called in really.
Am I right? What's the right? Okay, on the budget. Allocating or
You guys are
reallocating.
so practical. I was like, shipping containers. They're accessible.
Money that has already been set aside for.
But I thought it's not really accessible.
Some of them are.
In the
Who else allocating?
Right, temporary.
Hey, if the weather's nice, go outside.
yeah, it's
When I student talk, every time it's nice to go outside.
that's my favorite project that
Yeah.
Projects, I mean, it's sort of relevant to
Stopping.
yeah.
Because you are not doing anything.
Yeah, cats. You can be in a dead sleep. I
heard that.
Instantly.
So, remove.
We have lots of ideas.
What do you do when you need more?
Squatting.
So it's reevaluating what.
Reevaluating.
All right, since we're just practicing with this, 1 more minute. Normally you have a lot more time.
That's right. That's exactly it.
Okay, I'm not saying.
All right, if you can wrap up in just a second here.
Some of those peaceful ones where they're like, hey, so we should do this. That's actually happened in our college. We like to do a Senate in your office. And then they went to lunch, we're going to leave our stuff here and go like, and it's like, all right, so they went to lunch and came back.
All right, if I can bring you guys together. So after a half hour or so, or 40 minutes of rotating people into this brainstorming ideas, they tend to be pretty tired, actually. So it helps when you have food, it helps when you have some energy in the room. But at that point, we then take one of them and sit down and say, all right, let's talk this through as a group. And it allows the bullet points of everybody to synthesize and either do either a presentation or just talk about point by point so that people can understand. Because just because you've written the bullet points on there doesn't necessarily mean that people have the context of what that means. So it says, all right, one bullet point, remove or reevaluate. Well, that could mean a lot of things. But what did you guys mean by, and their topic was money, remove or reevaluate. What did you mean by that?
Remove perhaps a task or a project or whatever that's been done forever but doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Reevaluating priorities and
Priorities.
reestablish, kind of redo your priorities so that you can free up money for a project you really need to do.
Okay. You guys were talking about, you were space. What was one bullet point that really stood out on how do I get space for my project?
Shipping containers.
It's funny because that's one that I've actively pursued because for my hardware team, I've got some amount of office space, I have no storage space.
Yeah.
And so right now I've got storage in 5 different buildings. That's not really effective, so that's certainly one we
I was
talked
going with
about.
the people initially.
No, we were bringing people to things.
Yeah, and there is people that do that.
Yeah,
Well, actually,
yeah.
we'll do 1, 2, and 4-story buildings out of certain communities. We're going to get some interesting ideas. Now, you guys had,
How do I get more employees?
how do you get more employees?
Yes.
Either bring in more stakeholders, like another department, and sort of poach some of their employees, or make the initiative revenue generating.
What you asked for. I
Yeah.
think you've used a lot of coaching lately.
No, it's not poaching, it's interdisciplinary collaboration.
You guys were team unity. Was there a bullet point that stood out to you?
There was there's a strengths quest, we think is what it's called, where you determine the strengths of each of the team members, and then everyone else on the team was kind of then directed towards that person if they need help with that particular part of the project.
I'm going to pick on Bob here. We did a strengths finder test with Bob, and one thing I found out with Bob is he had strengths that no one else on the team did. And so I could go to Bob with different things because he was unique amongst the team. And that really, as a leader when Bob was on my team, made a difference for me. Because usually we want to focus on people's weaknesses. And so they come to work and what do? They get picked on. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta get better, gotta get better. And why not come to work and say, you're already really good at this. How come you can't just keep getting better at what you're good at? And I think from that, we took a project for Bob and actually did a disability assessment that was a real win for the university. So, sorry to pick on you, Bob. All right, so this is a technique that I call solve my problem. And it's just one of many techniques that you can do to brainstorm. I'll give you one other quick example. We used this technique with my desktop support team. Wow, it's got to be a while ago. We called it Sacred Cow. We said, what is the cow that cannot be killed because it's sacred, that needs to die? And we put up Post-it notes around the conference room, and they weren't shy. And pretty soon, though, we said, all right, we can tackle some of these. And we really made some changes that improved the morale of the team, but also made a big difference for the university. All right, listening. Listening is kind of that next step. Who do we need to listen to when we've got a big idea?
Everyone.
Everyone. Why is that, though?
Everyone can have a great idea, and it's kind of like somebody said yesterday, I think, in the gentleman from UNLV. You need to give everybody an opportunity to shine, but you also need to give everybody an opportunity to fail, because you're going to learn something from what, we don't want to call it failure, but, there's times where you do have a bad idea, but maybe something becomes a bad idea.
Exactly. So why do we need to listen to the naysayers? Because there's going to be a lot of naysayers out there to your big idea.
They are going to be the ones who make the idea better. They can identify the weak points, which you can then address and either decide this is a horrible idea, why are we doing it, or no, we can fix that, and then the idea is better for it.
Absolutely. But I like that. That puts a real positive spin on it. Quite frankly, when I was thinking of it, I was thinking you need to listen to the naysayers because that gives you what you need to address, right? So what are your counter arguments? That's it. But I like both sides of it. Is they're going to strengthen you and help you understand your own idea just that much better. What type of things are you listening for?
I find it interesting. I read a book where they were talking about Lincoln and his views on leadership. It's called Lincoln on Leadership. But when he was, his first presidential election race was really bad. It was nasty, kind of possibly like today. But one of the things is that when he became president, he handpicked people that were completely against him in every way and put them in his cabinet because he wanted to hear all those things. He wanted to, like you said, he wanted to hear why a plan could be possibly wrong. So, like these guys said, I think when you listen to that, you really have to find out, am I leading with my heart, or am I leading with my brain, or am I leading with facts? And sometimes, even though you think it's a bad idea, the facts are still there. So you have to listen to the facts, I think.
One of the things I appreciate about my team is that I've been able to assemble a good group of people that don't think like I do. There's a lot of diversity on that team from perspectives of higher education, perspective of technology. Because I know myself well enough that if I surrounded myself with like-thinking people, we'd go off in the wrong direction. And there's good things to be grounded by people of opposing but yet supportive opinions. It sounds like a very interesting book. Thank you for sharing. All right, so what do we gain by listening?
I think we can learn what people actually want, because there are the things people say they want, and then there's the desire that underlies that.
Thank
That
you
ask.
very much.
So, for example, faculty might say like, "Well, we need the, we need an online testing center where students can take proctored Blackboard tests." Well, that's not what they really want. What they really want is an efficient way to grade and make sure that exams are secure.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't have to be that solution.
And different people saying the same thing may mean different things. So thank you very much. All right, so types of listening. And I liked these types of listening because I think a lot of listening is almost a lost art form in some aspects, especially in our very busy our busy age, and especially when a lot of listening isn't done face-to-face. It can be challenging. But these come from Stephen Covey, 5 different types of listening. So ignoring, so you might be nodding your head, but you're thinking about the baseball game last night. But that's not really listening at all. And that can be very detrimental because there's trust issues there. Pretending, so humming along while not really following. This is your stereotypical,
What our kids do to us.
Blah, 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 blah. All right, selective listening. This is a dangerous one. You hear what you want to hear, not what's being said. In a political climate, this is often used for, they twist your own words to say, oh yes, what you meant to say was. Now, that selective listening, I think, could be one of the most dangerous ones on top here. Attentive listening, so paying attention to words. And so you're really making an effort to listen. You're listening to what that professor is telling you, but then you're not necessarily taking it to the next step of empathetic, where you're really giving time to understand what they're telling you. That it goes beyond the words and what's trying to communicate. So a lot of my initial studies, my bachelor's degree was in communications theory. And so I take what I learned 20-something years ago at a university really to heart. But if I summed up 3 years of communication theory in one thought, is that despite your best efforts, humans never fully communicate with each other. Because the ability of putting what's here in your brain into somebody's brain, you're never going to get it 100%. And it's important to bring that up because when you have that vision, you've been thinking about that vision days, weeks, months, years. And so you have this complete robust picture in your head and you just got your 30-second elevator speech and they know it all, right? So you're sold on this, right? They haven't necessarily had that chance to fully understand. So one of the things I'm trying to communicate to my staff is if you're not listening, don't expect to be listened to. If you truly want to be listened to, you need to give the opportunity to listen first and understand so you then know how to communicate to that person. And I think there's a lot of benefits for listening. There's relationships that are involved. It is leading you to really listen, but it also leads to a win-win situation. And if you're not familiar with Covey's concept of win-win, is I don't have to make you lose in order to accomplish my vision. In fact, oftentimes, if I make you successful, I'm going to make my own plan more successful. Give you a quick illustration of this is one of my dear friends, one of my first coworkers in the desktop support land, Scott. Scott hated doing paperwork. He was a manager of 5-6 students. They were doing great technical work with desktop support, and all the paperwork was just getting lost in the shuffle. I said, Scott, I don't mind doing paperwork. I've got a bureaucrat. I said, okay. You take a little bit more of the technology, I take a little bit more of the paperwork. work together, a little win-win. And he said, I would never wish this paperwork on my worst enemy. There's no way I'm going to let you do that. And he didn't quite grasp the concept that, you know, I can accomplish my vision of creating a help desk while you accomplish your vision of creating this great desk-side support, and we can be win-win because we're capitalizing on each other's strengths. He wasn't fully listening to what I was trying to express. And I was early in my career. I wouldn't say I was fully listening to him either, but together we can listen and build on each other's strengths. I also think if you begin to listen, friends, colleagues, family, doesn't matter whether this is in the workplace or out, they start opening up to you. And you start knowing them better as a person. And the more you learn and trust them as a person, the more they trust you as a person, you know, things go faster. Covey's son wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. Highly, highly recommend that, with a lot of examples that you build trust into your organization. A lot of processes go out the window because they just happen. You don't have to have a lot of checks and balances. Things speed up. You also discover what's truly important. What's the root cause of your colleagues? What they find might be standing in your way. If you just listen, might not be an obstacle at all. All right, bottlenecks. There's no limit on how much an individual can slow you down, but your top speed is dependent on the person in front. Elliot, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, Goldratt, he wrote a book called The Goal. If any of you work in a business school, this is used in almost every business school, and management, it's either supply chain management is the one that's going to use this. And he uses an example of a scout troop. And being a scoutmaster myself, is what order do you put the boys in on the hike? Because if you put the fastest boys in front, all of a sudden you have this long snake and you've lost the boys there and you've lost the slow pokes from the back. What happens when you put the slow ones in the front? Set your pace. It's as fast as you're going to go as that slowest scout. And so where this is important for your brainstorm is, what is your bottlenecks? What is going to slow you down? Now, the concept of a bottleneck, I think, is really important, and we don't often think of like a supply chain management when we think of how do we do something different in IT, or how do we do something different in education. But if I use the project management term, it just went blank, the critical path. That would be more of a something, all right, if we identify our critical path, this is the machine that needs to be constantly fed. It's always turned on. Other things we can turn off, turn on, we can break down, set up. It really doesn't matter as long as the slowest object is continually moving forward. That critical path isn't interrupted. But the idea of sitting down and saying, what are all the places that are going to slow me down in making this? What are the problems that are going to get in the way? Those are the ones that you address first, and you have a plan to keep those going. Anybody have a thought or an idea, story that they might want to share on a critical path within their project that they needed to keep going? I'll give you one. We are in the process of building out 7 new classrooms right next door. So if you actually walk out onto the sidewalk here, you'll see a new building that Boise State's going to be moving into 2 stories there. So we're building out our classrooms, and we wanted to be successful, and we want to be supportive, but we were building out our remodeling things on main campus. We didn't have the bandwidth to build out these 7 classrooms. All right, so we said, what are the options? We bring in some contractors to do it, but we know they're not going to be able to order supplies in time to have it open for our July 1st opening. So our big vision, we've got a hard deadline here of July 1st. It doesn't matter how good my vision of what technology I want to put in those classrooms, if I can't get the supplies here by the time classes start, I got a big problem. I got a bottleneck here. And so actually we were able to work with contractors that if they don't get any of the supplies they need in time, they can pull from our spares and our storage. We can go without some spares in the time, and it will be replenished once that object comes in. So it was a simple brainstorming that we would switch something from manufacturer supply to owner supply. But it was a matter of understanding what the constraints are of the project. You're always going to have some constraints. So the three things that we talked about here, I find are the constraints of higher education. Money, people, and space. I'm curious, which one do you think is the hardest constraint to overcome? Money, people, or space?
That's tough because all three of them have mixed variables. Your project you described remind me of something I have. I have a new building that's coming back online in phases. Currently, when it went down, it was owned by a college, but now the classroom's coming back to general access. We're kind of sharing the management of the money, and one of the problems we're running into is they want to reuse some of their old classroom technology again, some of which is analog, some of which is digital. This is not good.
Yep.
In 2016, students are going to come and expect new everything. And so for me, it's a people problem, because it's a problem of expectations and them trying to balance what they think is the right thing to do, and me trying to sway the meter with them and going, okay, you don't, in my world, this world, instructional technology, classroom technology, you don't open a brand new 2016 classroom with equipment that you purchased in 2012.
Right.
And that's painful for me and my team. So it's a people problem for me.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I think people could be interpreted a couple different ways. If the idea is that there aren't enough money, people, or space,
Right.
then it would be like asking Rockefeller how much money is enough, always a little bit more. Right. But I think it's more of a change management and getting people on board with new ideas. That's one of the key challenges.
I've already tried to figure out ways to help with this, and I've got one theory is that I'm buying those old projectors, going to disperse them across campus somewhere else where they won't be noticed quite so much. I mean, there are digital projectors, the Panasonic 430, that's our old campus standard, but, you know, get them out. But someone's got to say, oh yeah, that's a great idea, we buy that idea. Where's our money, dog?
Yes?
I think, I mean, we have a small school, we're about 5,000, and so I can always bring in more or different people, and we can always try to find money somewhere else, but I can only go so many places. Like, we do a little IBC, because I do e-learning. We have one IBC room, that's it. And we teach a lot of classes at it. We roll people through that class every day, 6 days a week, most of the day. And we have a couple instructors that are using it in the evenings now. But we have nowhere else that we can do our IBC. And actually the location it's in now is not perfect, because the people in the next office know way more about way more things than they ever wanted to, because you could hear everything. And so we've been looking at working with our IT people to find like a different space or more space, and it just doesn't exist.
Right.
And they're actually redoing other buildings on our campus right now, and so those people have all been displaced, and now they're at all those weird little places that we were thinking of using, but now they're not available. So, you know, storage containers may actually be a feasible alternative at this point.
Our IT shop is in 16 different buildings right now. We've got full-time people in 16 different buildings, so I hear you on some of that. Any other quick thoughts? Or when I've done this with other groups and really had time to delve into this, almost universally space comes down to the biggest constraint, which I find is interesting, because you would think on the surface that it would be money that's the bottleneck within higher education or public sector type thing. And I wouldn't say any of us are shorting the money or feel that we have enough money. And quite frankly, if we had enough money, we'd just buy another space or we'd buy more people. But space is an important thing. I also bring that up to give you some ideas, because if you're looking for money or full-time resources, trading space may get you far more than trying to procure full-time resources or money in other channels. If you take the tour of Boise State tomorrow, we did a lot of trading of space. We took our computer labs and basically went to the deans, a very casually way, we didn't do it this casually, and said, well, what would you give us if we gave you space back? And so we traded computer labs and made them offices or classrooms. And in return, they gave us full-time resources and student funding that we could use for an initiative. Now, the trick in all of this was the computer labs were already theirs. And so we traded them their own space for their money and things like that. But we gave them permission to shut down the computer labs. They didn't feel that they had that permission before. What I'd like you to notice, if you do go on the tour of Boise State, is we didn't reduce the number of computers available to students. We moved them out into the hallways and lobbies to unclaimed space. The students were happy because the computers were closer to them. Faculty and staff were happy because they got more space back, and we got money and people to invest in services for students. So it was a win all around. Okay, sell your idea. Who has heard the concept of whip 'em? All right, so one person, what's in it for me? Now, from a marketing perspective, you need to know what's in it for the individuals you're trying to sell. Because if nothing's in it for them, why should they invest in it? They might say yes, but you're not necessarily going to get support. They might say no, because it's going to take away from something else. So you really have to have this concept of, Leaf, I'd really like to work on an initiative in which you guys write all our knowledge management articles. You okay with that? It should only take, what, half of an FTE for the entire year. You're going to give that up for me, right?
What's in it for me?
What if I escalate far less tickets to you and actually free up more than half FTE? You want to sit down and maybe discuss on how we can work towards a win-win venture of making your department more successful by making my department more successful?
I'm listening.
That's kind of the concept at a very rushed and high level of what's in it for me, and certainly I'm trying to make it more overt than I think I would. But we do have to sell ideas. And if you're not familiar with the 30-second elevator speech, is if you don't have a concise enough idea to be able to take your grand vision that you've been thinking about for months and being able to sum it up in 30 seconds or less, you're probably not organized enough yet to sell it. And you really need to think that through, because a lot of our administrators aren't going to give us much more than 30 seconds worth of attention. And once they do, you really have had to sell them in that first 30 seconds to say, all right, let's sit down and schedule a meeting and really discuss this and work it through. So in that 30 seconds, you have to convey what's in it for them, not necessarily what's in it for others, but what's in it for them as the administrator, and why it's going to make a difference and what it is. That's a lot to pack into 30 seconds. If you go to an MBA marketing class, especially one that is based out of the Kellogg School of Theory of Marketing, they're going to teach you a political tool. It's actually marketers of politics came up with this tool called laddering. And I realize it's way too small to see. The intent isn't to read the boxes. But the concept here is that you sit down and you describe your big vision. But as you describe each of the attributes of your big vision, most people get hung up in this very bottom layer of being able to describe it. It's big, it's pink, and it goes fast, whatever it happens to be. These tangible physical attributes. We hear these on television commercials all of the time. All right, I'm seeing a big Ford F-150 pulling lots of weight. Why do I care? I don't. Well, you could use that lots of weight pulling capacity to pull your boat. Okay, I can pull a boat. You can have fun. You can have far more fun because you don't have to worry about your boat getting to the best lake. Ooh, I can have fun if I buy this truck. They identified a personal benefit. So you work up the ladder from describing the attributes of your project, your big idea, to kind of how your product benefits the institution, to how your project really benefits people. I really want to make your life easy, I want to be able to really improve things for students But I think if we can free up some time, that really we can lower the stress levels. Because I don't know about you, I feel overworked. And if we can somehow not feel so overworked, and I think knowledge management will help us reduce the overall work level for everybody. And the more we can talk about that at a personal level, of what this does for me, the more I'm really interested in making you a success, because that's going to help me. This is a good idea. So the concept here that you can go back and read more about is called laddering. There is one downside with laddering. As soon as you understand laddering, you probably won't trust any political speech or any political advertisement ever, because you realize they've done the emotional research of what's going to resonate with you. And so they're giving you an individualized message. But it is very powerful, and you can then start looking at television commercials and realize which ones are going on the emotional aspect and which ones really understand psychology and which ones are just describing a pretty fast object.
Mark,
Yeah?
can you clarify what types of situations that would be the most useful for in your opinion?
I think large projects. I mean, so if I'm doing a project of remodeling a classroom, I don't really have to worry about selling anybody. I'm just going to come in and we want a projector, okay, we can hang a projector. But if I want to come in and say, I think the library really should give up the entire first floor and create a learning commons that's going to bring in IT, the library, studying folks, all these different things, I got to understand the psychology, because that's moving your cheese a very far distance. And so what's in it for you, what is the personal benefits, but also what's the benefits of those that you serve. If I'm coming out with a real radical idea, I'm going to spend a lot more time on understanding the psychology and impact of the proposal. It's just an idea. Yeah. What's that?
I think a lot of us would love a learning commons. It's about how.
It's about how. And you got the space, but you have the money and the full-time resources. Go back to the constraints. Why is furniture so dang expensive?
And why does it take so long to get it?
Oh, it's all custom built, but yet it all looks the same. All right. Slow and steady change. I don't think any of us are programmers at heart in here, but agile versus the big bang. In IT, we've been doing the big bang forever and a day, which is we're going to do this waterfall methodology project management, and we're going to bring in a new ERP, and we're going to plan it for 3 years, we're going to build it for 16, and then we're going to deliver it over the course of 2, only to find out that it's out of date by the time we're done planning it. That's worked for us for years. And then we kind of decided we need to be more agile, more nimble. We need to be able to break things down into smaller pieces. And really, this is what I call the Google model. If any of you started out with your students on Google Apps, especially 7 years ago when Boise State started with it, we actually had an assignment, somebody at the help desk, Thursday at 2 o'clock, refresh their browser and reload Google Apps and see what had changed. Because that's when we knew that new things would be in our domain. And it was a weekly assignment, because every week they changed one small thing. Now, Google doesn't do it quite that often anymore. But slow and steady change, like I described with getting rid of signatures on our account request process, it's a matter of breaking things down and continually changing, but into tolerable amounts. And just a kind of a closing story, we've been working with our College of Business in changing on how support has been offered in that college, and it's been a huge change for the college. But the idea is we didn't want to disrupt anything. Well, how do you change everything and not disrupt anything? And it was a matter of slow and steady change, of being able to break it down into very small aspects that, oh, it's not a big deal if you change from one printer to the other. But if you say, I'm going to come in and change how you print, that's a bigger thing. So changing out one printer at a time, changing out the billing system, and then changing out all the components over time is better than replacing it all at once, is my experience with big things. probably don't have time for this one. This was an interesting idea of how you take your big strategy and then you build it and measure it to another big strategy, or you take it, do a little plan, design, launch, measure, plan, do, check, act, if you're looking at that methodology, and then you learn and listen, and go back, plan, do, check, act, learn and listen, and keep going through. In the same time period, I would venture that you're going to accomplish far more on that. And my final thought for you, I know we're out of time, is learn the rules of the game. My wife graduated with her master's degree in speech pathology technically in 8 months. What she really did, she went through the 3-year program like everybody else, but because we understood the rules of the game, we read what policies and procedures were. She took most of her graduate classes as an undergraduate, paying undergraduate tuition and getting all of her graduate credit. So by the time she started, she really only had 2 semesters to finish up. She was a traditional student, but not by what we normally think of. And I think that plays into what we do. HR will tell us no end of things that we can't do until you read HR's rules and go, I can have food at a meeting. I just have to fill out the proper paperwork. Oh, well, I can fill out paperwork. That's not a big deal. Oh, I can hire somebody as a temporary employee, keep them for a year, and then hire them in as a full-time employee without a break of employment. Oh, I bypass so many problems if I do that. I'm just going to promote a student employee to a temp, because that's the person I want anyway. There's all sorts of things you can do if you understand the rules of the game in making your vision, because a lot of people are going to quote tradition at you, not actual rules. I thank you for your time, and I wish you the best of luck with your grand vision. Hello. How you doing? Good job. Thank you. Appreciate it.